attention in consideration. Oh.
All right, thank you so much, Tazeen. I really appreciate that. I wanted to go ahead and welcome all of our participants. And before I do, I'm going to go ahead and speak a little bit about our organization, Justice for All Canada. We are the organizer of today's supercritical program. So JFA Canada is a Canadian human rights organization that advocates primarily for Muslim minorities facing oppression, crimes against humanity, and genocide. We are a grassroots organization and a nonprofit focusing on making an impact. Our work does involve influencing policy level change and awareness about the illegal persecution of all minorities that are facing violence and discrimination. So for example, a lot of the times when we have Islamophobic policies at the government level, we do acknowledge that they inadvertently impact other minorities on the ground. So if I could give a quick example of this, in India, we do a lot of awareness work for challenges and discrimination faced by Christian minorities, as well as Dalits, indigenous and tribal groups that are called Adivasi. So just an example of how we use our voice to highlight the plight of all religious minorities facing a similar level of persecution. And we do this by peacefully campaigning and advocating against ongoing ethnic cleansing, as well as racism and violence towards a number of persecuted groups, but predominantly Uyghurs in East Turkestan, as well as Kashmiris, Rohingya, including Muslims in India and other minorities, as I just mentioned. And we do this through a number of ongoing methods. So for example, community education and organizing, coalition building by working with trusted partners in Canada, as well as impacted peoples on the ground of these regions that I just mentioned. We also do grassroots lobbying and peaceful protesting across Canada, but primarily in the Greater Toronto area. For more information, you can visit justiceforallcanada.org. And I just wanted to go ahead and introduce our host for today's program. You just heard from her, but her name is Tazeen. She graduated from Harvard and she worked as a journalist for the Uighur Human Rights Project, as well as Calgary University. She previously contributed as a journalist to a number of prominent public outlets and news outlets, rather, and she co-authored 2 Canadian books on the immigrant experience. Tazeen currently serves as the manager of JFA Canada's Prisoners of Conscience campaign. Tazeen, I'm so honored to hand it over to you so that you can introduce our first respected panelist. And you are still muted. If you could just double check your volume, please.
You hear me?
I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
So let me introduce the panelists for this webinar. We have with us Honorable Member of Parliament Sameer Zuberi from Quebec, who has been very strong voice on various human rights issues. He is the chair of International Human Rights Subcommittee in the Parliament, and he's also a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And he has been working closely with Justice for All on various campaigns. So Zuberi is, by the way, introducing a motion for the fast track of Uyghur immigration in the Parliament soon. Zuberi has been working along with Justice for All, as I told. Our next panelist is Mehmet Toti, one of the most prominent Uyghur activists globally, and executive director of the Uyghur Advocacy Rights Project. Toti is an ethnic Uyghur raised during the Cultural Revolution. He was an active participant in the first Uyghur protest against birth control and the massive unsettlement aimed to slash the Uyghur majority in East Turkestan in 1985. By the way, the 1985 Urumqi protest was the first protest against the communist regimes around the world during the Cold War, organized 4 years before the Tiananmen Square protest in 1989. Toti escaped from East Turkestan in the 1990s on a train from Beijing to Moscow, as he told me a few years ago. Our third panelist is Rizwan Gul, an Uyghur activist from New Zealand, currently based in New York and working as a program associate for Justice for All, USA. Our fourth panelist, unfortunately, she's stuck with her flight and she would not be able to join us today. So yeah, before proceeding further, I will invite, So now I will invite Honorable MP Sameer Zuberi for his opening remarks regarding the Uyghur issue and the direction of the Canadian foreign policy towards this issue.
Thank you for everyone for organizing. Tazim, thanks for bringing us together. Justice for All, for the excellent work that you do. And to all the attendees for being here, taking time out of your evening when you know you could be putting kids to bed or putting yourself to bed, but for taking this important moment. This type of gathering, these gatherings are critical in order to advance basic dignity and respect to people. And what we are advocating for is advocacy that we would do for anyone, which is basic human rights, basic dignity and respect. These values are universal values, and we would expect them to apply to anyone. What we see today is, as many of you know, I'm sure most, if not all, know, is that there are grave and serious crimes against humanity occurring towards the Uyghur people. And there are approximately upwards of 1 million now currently in concentration camps in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region within China. And there is also a recognition that what's happening to the Uyghur people rises to the level of genocide. This has been recognized by our House of Commons here in Canada. They unanimously recognized, each and every party did vote in favor of that, including my party, the Liberal Party. The majority of my fellow parliamentarians within my party voted for that recognition. We're not alone. Canada is far from being alone in terms of this recognition. America, the administration has recognized that a genocide is occurring. Other European governments have also had recognitions, parliaments have recognized. And so most recently, fast forward to today, just in August of this year, there was a groundbreaking report by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet. She published a report that was quite damning, with extremely limited access to the region in question, with extremely limited access, chaperoned access. She concluded, number one, that the allegations of the Uyghur people are credible, and two, that these, despite the limited access and the diplomatic language of the UN, may rise to crimes against humanity, which is extremely serious in international law. And this, I question how strong the finding would have been had access been unfettered, unchaperoned. I'm certain that it would have been much stronger. That being said, there's an obligation on the part of all of us as individuals, as actors within civil society, leaders, and governments to do something. Myself, I'm one parliamentarian. I am part of the governing party, but I'm technically not part of the government. It's a bit of a distinction. For those who study political science, you understand that. And so I had a motion or a bill I could have presented on any subject, a bill to legislate on anything within Canada, or a statement to make through motion. And I chose to take up this issue as the issue that I wanted to use my quote unquote one shot, because these don't come all the time. I have a colleague who has been serving almost 20 years, and he just this year got his first private member's bill slot. I only have been for 3 years, and I just received my slot. I chose to use it on this. Why? Because I believe that it's a cause that requires movement, attention, one that is a just cause, the right one, one that I think that we can have impact on. The motion that was mentioned by Tazim earlier on is numbered M62. It'll be debated on October 26th, and then again voted upon in December or January. And I'm hoping and expecting that all parties, my party and other parties, will unify speak with one voice to support what I'm putting forth, which is to call upon the government to resettle 10,000 Uyghur here in Canada. 10,000 as of 2024, over 2 years. We have a great tradition in Canada of being there to welcome refugees in times of need. Each and every year, we welcome 63,000 refugees. We also have had special programs for Yazidis, for Syrians, for Afghans, for Ukrainians, for Hong Kongers, human rights defenders. Now I'm proposing that we create a special one for those suffering right now genocide. And I won't get into the details, except to say that the types of crimes we're talking about are unspeakable crimes, nightmarish crimes. I've heard them with my own ears from survivors, female survivors, male survivors. We've heard from jurists, legal scholars, academics, former Canadian justice ministers. We've heard from many different people, all say that what's occurring is genocide. In terms of the motion that I'm bringing forth, what can you do on this webinar right now? There are essentially, number one, I would find out about what this motion is, read up on it. You know, you can check out my Twitter account. There's a fair amount of information there now. Number two is that if you believe that this is a correct cause, then please do ask for an in-person meeting with your parliamentarian, ask for a sit down, and explain why you want them to support this motion when it comes up for a debate and for a vote. And three, share your opinion on social media. Twitter is a very powerful tool. It's underestimated how powerful it is, and other forms of social media. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, everybody, for your being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MP Sameer. And let me just confirm, M62 will be launched in Parliament on October 26th, you said, and it will be debated in December and January.
It'll be debated October 26th for the first hour, and again in December or January, yes.
And you suggest that we should sit with our parliamentarians wherever we are within our ridings, and we should discuss why this motion is important.
If you feel it's important. If you don't feel it's important, then, you know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely all of us who are viewing that are for it. We stand behind this motion M62. So, yeah. So, brother Sameer, MP Sameer, are you leaving us and will join again?
I'm here for the moment, for the time being, and I might have to. I've been traveling a fair amount, but I might have to duck out. But I'm currently here with you, so please, I'm sure your other panelists have gems to share.
Yeah, thank you very much. So now I will invite Mehmet Tuhti for his opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Tazeen, and my old friend, and we have met a number of times and exchanged, and a long conversation we had, and we talked about the situation of Uyghurs and many other things, and it's also thank you for Justice for All. And as the honorable member said, and this is a long journey, and when we heard a bad news, terrible news from back home, and when we cut off all communications with our mothers and parents and siblings, brothers, sisters. And it was a great shock for each and every member of Uyghur communities as of 2016. And then slowly, despite the tight control of Chinese government, bad news started to arrive. And tens of thousands of people. In Kashgar alone in 2018, reports by Radio Free Asia, 120,000 people just arrested within 3 months. And initially, honestly, I disbelieved it. What's going on? Then communication became impossible. And then we started to see the satellite images of concentration camps shocked the conscience of many. And then many intellectuals and professors, doctors, intellectuals, and public figures, and singers, soccer players, we start to get that information that those, the brains of Uyghur society, all of them arrested and put in concentration camps, and the Chinese government reopened the genocide book of Second World War and applied for Uyghurs. And so as an activist, it was a long journey for me. And it was difficult to explain people because it was difficult at that time for me to digest. It was difficult how to present because there's no hard evidence except the news, except some social media exchanges or social media messages came out of the region. And when I remember when I spoke with the officials in Canadian government, and I was told, okay, we know the situation is really bad there, but please do not exaggerate. Because it was really difficult. I could understand their feeling. And so we started to convince our respected representatives in our parliament one by one, and shared our experience and the situation of our family members and family members of our communities and all across the world, not only in Canada. And then the respected members in our parliament, they start to have a hearing, and we helped them to reach out those victims and camp survivors and other the experts who monitor the situation and who looked at the Chinese government's internal documents. And then one after another, the leaked documents start to emerge on major news outlet, and the secret Chinese government documents and operating manuals of the concentration camps, and Karakash list, how the Chinese government targeted Uyghurs for their religious belief, and 75 elements of extremism, just like having a beer or simply giving up the alcohol or giving up cigarette smoking or wearing certain way or purchasing certain type of foods. And then everything build up one after another. And now, at least now, our parliament was first legislation to acknowledge the atrocity crimes happened in East Turkestan as a genocide on February 22nd, 2021. Actually, many of us remember the February 22nd, but in fact, first parliamentary recognition was on October 22nd, 2020, by the International Subcommittee of International Human Rights. And Honorable Member Sameer Zuberi was a member of that committee, and he has a fingerprint on the report about the Uyghurs, and he has a strong voice at that time. He had a strong voice for the members of the committee to come up with a decision acknowledging the atrocity as a genocide. And our subcommittee, the first ever legislative body to acknowledge the atrocities of Uyghur genocide. For that reason, I would like to thank one more time to Honorable Member for his right-minded decision. And now we have a UN report, and now we have a judgment from the Uyghur Tribunal, and the concentration camp survivors spoke up. Even the Chinese police transferred from mainland China to East Turkestan to help to suppress those Uyghurs in the concentration camps. He spoke up. And the Chinese students studying law in University of British Columbia initially hesitated, initially thought that this is kind of conspiracy theory from the Uyghurs or Western governments. And he did research. At the end, he ended up locating more than 75 concentration camps by using simply Google Earth map. And so we have evidence right now. And of course, UN report did not call it genocide, but UN report at the same time tabled number of elements of genocide. And most importantly, UN report said it is systematic. It is state-sponsored. By saying that, UN report clearly said this is intentional. It is not accidental. It is intentional policy of Chinese government. And the UN report didn't say this is duck, but described how duck looks like. And UN report said dramatic drop of birth rate among the Uyghurs. That is one element of genocide. And the UN report says systematic and widespread torture, inflicting torture, physical and mental torture is another element of genocide. And so basically UN report used all internal Chinese documents. And for that reason, and many people argue that why UN report did not come up with a stronger language to increase its credibility. UN report just used internal Chinese documents. From the Chinese documents, they came up with the list of atrocity crimes, including the genocide and including the crime against humanity. And for that reason, it is important. And I have to mention, UN report, what we see right now is not the original report. This is a report went through numerous haircuts by Chinese government till the last hour. And the Chinese government pushed really hard to change the language and alter that. And what we see today is the report of the alteration, of the haircut. And for that reason, it is important. And if we want to really assess what the UN report initially came up with, we have to look at the original report without Chinese alteration, without Chinese haircut. And if we could see much stronger language. We could see much stronger proof for the atrocity crimes taking place in this in the region. And for that reason, we have a valid reason to ask a stronger action from the government. And now there are statements made by major world actors, just like G7 foreign ministers, and the German Chancellor openly stood up at the UN General Assembly and raised the government's concern on behalf of Germany on the UN report and demand the Chinese government to implement all the recommendation tabled by the UN report, and the United States did so. And our foreign affairs joined by other G7 foreign affairs and issued very strong statements citing the crime against humanity. And after that, what we do, and we have to demand our government to act, because genocide is a crime. Crime against is the crime that forbidden by international law. And we have to deal with that. And the state parties to Geneva Convention has a responsibility to uphold its legal obligation to prevent this genocide from happening. At the same time, punish those who are responsible for this genocide and help or assist for the victims of genocide. And unfortunately, many governments did not act on that. Even United States, they are sanctioned, the government is sanctioning Chinese companies and the Chinese officials, but the United States is not doing just just because it's genocide. They are sanctioning without mentioning just we are doing just because we have obligation under Geneva Convention. So those sanctions and those actions did not come out as obligation from Genocide Convention. And we have to be clear, because the international criminal law is very, very clear, and many state parties, the members of the Genocide Convention, they are clear about the obligation. So it's time to uphold those legal obligations, and it's time for us to act stronger and ask our governments to act, including our parliamentarians. And for that reason, our advocacy work is important. For that reason, this awareness raising is important, and we want the Muslim communities across the world to stand shoulder to shoulder with very tiny Uyghur Muslim communities in Canada, and be voice for them, and be voice for those voiceless people suffering in the concentration camps right now, millions of them. And for that reason, I really appreciate for this program. And I want to send my message to all Canadian Muslims: be aware of what's happening in East Turkestan right now and what's happening for Uyghur Muslim brothers and sisters, and do something here in Canada by holding our elected officials and our government accountable to act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Mehmet Toti, adding your perspective. And yeah, it is very, I mean, it's really interesting to note that UN has used diplomatic language. He hasn't used, they haven't used strict, harsh language.
I couldn't hear you.
Tazeen, I think that you are muted once again. I think your connectivity is wavering.
I began working on this issue in 2018. I was a student at Harvard at that time. And in 2018, it was really difficult to believe. As a Pakistani Canadian, it was more difficult to believe. And I began my research, started from the media reports. Then I went to human rights reports and the books, and then I started working with the primary sources. And each and every source, I did more than 150 interviews, and each and every source I consulted told me that they don't have any, I mean, the Uyghur sources in diaspora. I interviewed, I went to Turkey and lived there for 4 weeks with Uyghur refugees. And I discussed each and every Uyghur I met on internet, from New Zealand, from Scandinavia, from Pakistan, from Kazakhstan, from Afghanistan. So they each and every Uyghur has the same story. They were not in contact with their relatives in East Turkestan. Their relatives were either in concentration camps or disappeared. Those who came to meet their relatives in the West or in Turkey or in Egypt or in Saudi Arabia, when they went back, they disappeared at the airports. So, and then in 2019, the news came that many of them have been jailed. They have been convicted of the crimes like having a beard, wearing a scarf 4 years back. I mean, so yeah, I mean, personal testimonies. So United Nations report basically confirmed all these human rights reports, media reports, and personal testimonies from the people from diaspora, Uyghur people from diaspora. And there were some people like Gulbahar Jalilova, I remember, Umar Bakali, and then Meher Gul Tursun, who testified in the US Congress. Umar Bakali testified in the Japanese parliament, I remember. So I met and I talked to all these people, and the stories there were horrific, much more horrific than the human rights reports and the media reports when you talk to any Uyghur. And the problem did not started in 2018 or 2016. Or many people told me that actually the people began to disappear in 2013 and 2014. Mostly they were either businessmen, or they were academics or publishers or writers or researchers or historians. And then Chinese government came in 2016. They basically started incarcerating common man. So yeah, this is the situation. And now I will turn my attention to Rizwan Gul, an Uyghur activist from New Zealand, currently based in the US. So Rizwan Gul, we would like to hear your opening remarks. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much, Sister Tazeen, and for Justice for All, for creating this platform to raise our voices for those who are voiceless. By taking this chance, I also would like to extend my appreciation for the support and the work that MP Sameer has been doing for Uyghur cause. We really appreciate your support. This is much needed support that we need, and I hope that, and I believe that you will support us stronger and stronger, and bring some tangible results in the future. And I also would like to extend my appreciation for our Uyghur brother Mehmet Toti, who has been tirelessly working for bringing positive changes to Uyghurs' life in diaspora, and for those who are living on the under difficult situations. And I hope again in Canada, something positive will happen, may happen, the increase number of the Uyghurs over there and with a good resettlement results, inshallah. And again here, myself, I was like a bit quite a person before everything started, but with the disappearance of my brother, I gradually become the voice of his. My brother, my own brother, Maulan Nur Muhammad, was detained in January 2017 with no official explanation that we have received until now. We didn't receive any official explanation why he was detained and imprisoned. I assume that the detention was because he visited Turkey. As Sister Tazin heard from many Uyghurs before, that, you know, the Uyghurs who visited one of the any countries in the Chinese list, the 26 countries, they have been targeted for imprisonment. So my brother visited Turkey between 2012 and 2014. So after he returned home, after 3 years, he was detained. And just before he was detained, he actually successfully registered his own small business, in addition to his full-time job with China Telecom. So that successful registration itself proves that he was innocent. If he had any criminal record, anything he has done that against law, he couldn't register that small business like a small business and successfully. But he has been in prison now more than 5 years. We are living the pain. We have been impacted by losing our loved ones for those arbitrary detention and those inhuman treatment, torture. And as Mama Tohti mentioned, that there are a lot of we just can't imagine that how they are suffering over there. So we in diaspora Uyghurs, we are living the pain, and we have been like, it's our moral duty to speak for those who are voiceless. And we are living in the free land, like New Zealand, USA, and Canada. We have to use our voices. We have to use our voices, and we have been seeing the result. Like if you think back 4 or 5 years, there are very few platforms like this, or opportunities like this, talking about Uyghur causes. We had very less support, and even we were questioned about how, you know, like questioned about our losing our family, the family members that we lost. When I contacted a prominent human rights organization about my disappearance of my brother, I was questioned. Can you verify it? We don't have access. Until now, we don't have access. But now when we see that there are increasing number of chances that we use to voice ourselves, and we talk about Uyghurs causes, and we actually talk about what we need to do to save lives. By saying that, it is good to see that UN finally released the long-awaited report. But at the meantime, it is very disappointing that UN didn't use genocide, this word. If you look at the UN, Genocide Convention, we can see, and based on the reports and the witnesses' accounts we have received and the Uyghur tribunal results, we have, it's been already confirmed that the genocide Uyghurs have been experiencing meet every single genocide, the items of Genocide Convention. For example, killing the members of a group, destroying group in whole or part, and serious mental and physical harm, preventing birth of a group, forced transfer of children. Everything is happening on the Uyghurs. And but this UN report has failed to call it as a genocide. It is very against their own, the set of convention items that they have they have been using to define the genocide. And another thing that really bothering me is that they have even failed to, this report failed to mention sterilization, forced sterilization. They used very mild terms like birth control. If I can just read what they have said. Okay, they said, this report said that serious indications of violations of reproductive rights through the coercive and discriminatory enforcement of family planning and the birth control policies. So they have been very careful using these terms. But where is the forced sterilization? There have been reports, there have been witnesses, witness accounts we have been hearing. That's why it's good to have the UN release this report, because it can legitimize that the Beijing government's oppression and the series of, if I use their language, the series of human rights violations and abuses on our people, Uyghurs, and other Turkic people in East Turkestan, and by providing such a report. But again, if I mention again, like it failed to use genocide. This is genocide. This word is a very right term to describe what is really happening to Uyghur people in this 21st century. But UN failed to mention this and failed to mention forced sterilization, which has been like traumatizing us, the Uyghurs who are living in diaspora, and also traumatizing those camp survivors who have personally experienced such process. So by saying that, there are a lot, again, there are a lot to do. So for example, we have to demand the UN to call it genocide. And also, as MP and Sameer mentioned before, they have produced this report with a very limited access to what's really happening to East Turkestan. The UN should continue to push Chinese government to give them an access to have a good assessment of what is really happening there without any intervention or limitation from the Chinese government. They have to keep demanding this one. And another thing is that, as Mehmet Tohti also mentioned, that Uyghurs in diaspora have been also suffering in many aspects. Where is UN? Where is UN's role in here supporting those Uyghurs who are living in other countries, in host countries like Turkey, and even Uyghurs in USA? They are also suffering from various reasons. Where is their support? Where is, if we can call it the lives of the Uyghurs in diaspora, we can use resettlement. Even though they would love to go back to home whenever it's possible, but they also have lives in wherever they are living in, but they are having difficulties because of many issues like passport issues, stateless, asylum seeker applications, and education, mental health. We have been, all of us, like Mehmet Tohti mentioned, that we're suffering. A lot of people are suffering because of mental health and because of this pain we are carrying every day, and the anxiety we have towards our loved ones back home. These actually take a toll on our health. So what I'm trying to say is that the governments, and especially UN, has a role and the responsibility to take care of those Uyghurs who are living in difficulties in diaspora. That's why I actually would like to see that UN include Uyghurs in their, what is that called, Global Refugee Forum that UN is running. And also migrant, I think it's another one is called Global Migrant Forum. These are platforms that UN has been running for those who are migrants or refugee background. Uyghurs living in diaspora is eligible for both in terms of their being migrant and refugees. UN should take responsibility to provide support for Uyghurs in diaspora. That's why actually we can ask UN, first of all, if they care and if they really follow their own rules and moral responsibilities to those who are really experiencing genocide, they should call it genocide, as well as should ask, demand, keep pushing for the unlimited access to make assessment over there. On the other hand, to look after those who Uyghurs in diaspora. Uyghurs, we are decreasing in numbers of population, both in East Turkestan and outside. And for example, just yesterday we heard that Uyghurs actually deported from Indonesia. Deported, can you believe? There are still, deportation is happening. Uyghurs are still facing deportation. So this is another issue we have to push as well to make a positive change. So UN has a responsibility to help to protect as well as support Uyghurs in diaspora. That's two aspects. So by saying that, I finish my open mark here. So thank you again, and we looking forward to hear more about on these issues. So.
Thank you so much, Rizwan. I was just informed by MP Sameer that he wanted to comment on the testimonies given by yourself and Brother Mehmet. So MP Sameer, please go ahead and share your thoughts with us.
Sure. I just wanted to share, you know, the what we're talking about, Mehmet and Ms. Noor mentioned, like a number of examples, but what we are talking about when we say forced sterilization, we've heard witness testimony say that physicians who were extracting the IUDs that were put into women, that they're not the ones that we know about in North America. They are actually fused with the womb, and when the physician tries to remove them, they have to remove the whole organ, not just the device. So the type of you know, the scale and the crudeness of what's happening, the surveillance of these communities with you know, countless cameras in their communities, people not being able to move from neighborhood to another without express permission. We know about places of worship being leveled. This again, as Mehmet said, 70-odd concentration camps found simply through satellite imagery, Google Maps. Those places of worship also have been leveled, and the evidence is in Google Maps. There is a ton of information that's public. We recently saw the haunting photos of hundreds of people just from one center, one leak. Hundreds of people, haunting photos. I'm sure you've seen them all. Senior citizens who have no business being detained. I mean, the grandmothers to teenage girls who again have no business being detained. And this is through leaks, not through willingly divulging the information. Mehmet spoke about leaked documents that the UN report relied upon. These were well reported in the New York Times and in the Guardian and other papers. This is not willing information that has been given to the public. This is information that has been leaked again with probably a great amount of danger to the person or persons who leaked it. And so, you know, we have to continue to speak up. That's the only way in which this will stop. I think we have to have a firm conviction in our hearts that this will stop. We always have to have a hope that this will stop. Hope for the future. I wanted to just comment very briefly on the UN report. When it came out, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister said two key things. One, that China will be held to account for its crimes that is committed, and Canada will work with the international community to do this. Two, our Foreign Affairs Minister said that we will move on supply chains to ensure that there's no forced labor in our Canadian supply chains. So we have right now legislation on the floor in the chamber that will address the issue of supply chains, and I do expect it will pass. This includes forced labor in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. So I don't want to take up more time. I just want to share those things. I see there's some questions and answers here.
Thank you so much, MP Sameer, for reflecting on these harrowing details and also just giving a call to action. I think that ending off with a sense of hope is super important. I agree that there are questions coming in, and I wanted to kind of make use of our time. Brother Mehmet Tohti, I wanted to present to you the first question as it was directed to you. Margaret Quake Johnston says that it's been disturbing to see the support that China can get from Muslim countries at the United Nations. So she's probably talking about Muslim and nation states at the UN. What has been the support from Muslim organizations and individuals here in Canada? Mehmet, you're so well connected on the ground level. Please go ahead and answer that question if you can. And I think you are muted. I apologize to interrupt you there.
Yeah. Thank you, Margaret, for this excellent question. And Margaret Johnston, this is at the same time our policy advisor, and I express my gratitude for her time and dedication just to guiding us and advising us with her valuable experience, and we truly appreciate it. And in terms of Muslim countries' solidarity with China, when it comes to Chinese ongoing Uyghur genocide, it is shocking, and it is embarrassing, and it is unacceptable. And not only from human perspective as a Muslim, it is unacceptable as a Muslim as well. For unfortunately, the many Muslim countries, they have their own problems in terms of respecting the human rights and upholding the human dignity and the value system. And most of the Muslim countries, unfortunately, are run by corrupted officials who values money and the power instead of principles and values. And they are applying a totally different set of rules and standards for themselves, and just opposite for their own people. And for that reason, because of the closed circuit nature of those Muslim countries and their operating system and a lack of freedom and democracy, we are truly unable to change their opinion. And we are still trying to approach them, and individually, privately, and explain what is happening. And sometimes we are received, sometimes they simply just stayed away and run away from us in many international forums, even not giving us a chance to communicate with them. And in that regard, it is also unacceptable. And in terms of support and solidarity with the Muslim organizations in Canada and around the world, it is totally a different story. And we have a wide range of support from, for example, the Muslim organizations in Malaysia. And we have a wide range of support in Muslim organizations in Turkey. And also we have strong support from the Muslim organizations in Western democracies. And they are standing shoulder to shoulder. On this Monday, the National Council of Canadian Muslims organized the Uyghur Action Day in the Parliament, and they scheduled a meeting for with more than 40 MPs and a number of cabinet ministers. And Muslim Canadians came from all the way from Vancouver and Halifax and Calgary and Toronto, and gathered in Ottawa and spent there 2 times with their own expenses just to be voice of Uyghurs. And for that reason, we truly appreciate it for that. And the Justice for All, now they are having this program. This is the second or third program I have been participating, and try to raise more awareness among the Muslim communities, and a number of Muslim TV networks and a Muslim media outlet also they are running the stories about the Uyghur genocide. And so we have to give that credit for our Muslim organizations in Canada and the US and the Western democracy, because democracy and the fundamental freedom and the value system is totally the different, that is totally different privilege that with all other Canadians and other citizens of the Western democracy, the Muslim the community also using this privilege and raising their voice. And unfortunately, that privilege is not available on many the Muslim countries run by authoritarian dictatorship system. And so we continue to work, and we have the group in World Uyghur Congress with the strong religious education from the accredited Islamic universities in the world. And then 10 or 15 people, the Uyghur Muslim scholars, they formed the one strong advocacy group, and they are traveling all Muslim countries, and they try to create some sort of public opinion, and they try to influence the government decision, and they are reaching out to Muslim MPs, and hopefully it will change. And the most importantly, I have to remind you that since long time, the Chinese government is effectively using the Muslim countries, and they are feeling against some policy of the Western countries, and acted like a voice of the Muslim countries at the UN. And for that reason, there is also a geostrategic partnership between some Muslim countries as well. And many Muslim dictators at the same time, they are seeing China as a savior from any UN sanctions, just like we know the fate of Saddam Hussein and the Gaddafi. And so many Muslim leaders are scared to death to have their life ended in the same tragic way. And so China has a veto power. That veto power gave a lot of leverage for China in dealing with the Muslim countries. And so we have to change that, and we are trying actually to be a bridge between the Muslim countries and the Western democracies, create more understanding in their problem, to solve their problem with dialogue. And hopefully in the long run, and I'm optimistic, there will be some change. And currently we have to accept the situation as it is.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You've touched on so much there. I wanted to direct the next question at you and perhaps get MP Sameer's take on this as well. Do you believe, and so Kayum Masinmov is asking this question, do you believe that it is possible to accelerate the Uyghur refugee resettlement plan in Canada from 2023? I think the original plan was 2024. So in other words, to expedite it instead of 2024 as proposed by Honorable MP Sameer's M62 motion. So if you had any thoughts on that, Brother Mehmet and MP Sameer, if you could lend us a few more minutes of your time and just maybe comment on that on behalf of the motion that you are introducing soon.
Okay, I'm starting first, or Sameer? Okay.
Whatever you would like between you and him.
Okay, if Sameer, if you are about to leave, just let me give the floor to you first.
You can go ahead as you like.
And there is a misunderstanding. Of course, the starting the time for the resettlement of Uyghur refugees as of the January 2024 was not the idea of MP Sameer Zuberi, and he wanted to start this process earlier.
I mean,
yeah.
Like that 2/24 was a date that was chosen because it's a date that that can work well. So this date is you know, we have right now an immigration system that is quite stressed, but it is being unblocked right now. And so in planning this, what was put forth was a date that would allow for things to actually happen. And so 2024 is a date to allow for immigration to actually plan a pathway that can work, that is possible. So when putting forth this motion, I didn't want to put forth just a pie in the sky idea. I wanted to put forth something that will actually happen. I want to put forth something that is ambitious but reasonable. And that's what this motion is. It's ambitious but reasonable. And that's why the date of the year of 2024 was chosen. And that's why 10,000 was chosen. And that's why third countries were chosen, because we know that we cannot reach into China and pull people out. And just for everybody's information, there was a recent Wilson report that showed the urgency of the motion that is being put forth. It's already been deposited. It's already public. It's already out there, but will be debated and discussed on the 26th of next month. That was done by the Wilson Center. They published a documented information that 1,574 people of Turkic and other Turkic minorities and Uyghurs have been detained or refooled, which essentially means deported, at the behest, upon pressure. We're talking about third countries that were pressurized into detaining and deporting Uyghurs and Turkic minorities. So this is the context in which the motion is being put forth. The idea is to actually allow people to not be finding themselves in a situation where they're under threat of deportation, where they inevitably end up in the concentration camps that we have just learned about and described.
Thank you very much, Brother Sameer. Let me tell you that I am in contact with some of the people in Pakistan who are really threatened of deportation. And there is no way. I told him to contact the United Nations office there for the immigration. And there are many people there are thousands and thousands of people in Turkey. Then there are people who are staying in Greece. I know there are some people who crossed Mediterranean or the Aegean Sea from Turkey to Greece. And they are there in Greece, either in Greece or Kosovo or Bosnia, and they are miserable. But unfortunately, no government is using this fast track of immigration for them, either a fast track of immigration. They are, I mean, especially in Pakistan, one of the most important sources I used during my course of research was Pakistani husbands of Uyghur wives. That is undeniable evidence from Pakistan. And they are facing, their families are in East Turkestan. They can't get visa to meet their families. So there are many outside China who should be given Canadian nationality or US nationality. Unfortunately, nothing is being done. And it's already too late if we see. We have been listening these news since 2018. And now it's 2022, and then 2 more years until we are going to propose. Actually, we are proposing it for 2024. Thank you, Brother Sameer, for working for these persecuted people around the world. This is really miserable. So yeah, I will come to Mehmet Toti. Yeah, please, I will give the floor to Mehmet Toti to answer this question.
Yeah, and partly, let me add my comments for the question posed to the MP Sameer Zuberi. Yeah, and there is not only one party to this motion, and MP Sameer Zuberi has to work with the officials in immigration and the Minister of Global Affairs and the government part as well. And there are some the situation and the really occupied now the government's all efforts, just like settlement of Ukrainians and others. And for that reason, even we wished for much earlier time and the actual situation and the capacity of our immigration system, and compelled us to make some compromise and just to choose the reasonable timetable to be successful. And for that reason, I perfectly understand. And so, and still, that is the position of the government, and that is the position of our parliamentarians as the rights activists, and we are pushing still for starting this process as of 2023. and this as an Uyghur organization and advocacy group, and it is our job just the push for government to take early action, as MP Sameer Zuberi mentioned. Today, Uyghurs are facing transnational repression by one of the most powerful state on this planet Earth. And compared to that, Ukrainians in the third countries, they are not facing that challenge. And no other refugee groups are facing the challenges that Uyghur refugees are facing right now. And so the situation of Uyghur refugees dire. And so we have every reason to push our government to act as soon as possible. And we have every reason to ask our parliamentarians just to come up with much expedited version of this bill and whatever the procedure in the parliament. And instead of having 2 or 3 times discussion, it is well known, the situation is clear, and the reports are abundant, and the parliamentarians already spoken up, and the genocide was acknowledged almost 2 years ago. And so instead of waiting for another a year or a half, we have to act, and just the situation on the ground pushes us to act as soon as possible. And yeah, I perfectly understand the situation and the government's preoccupation with so many other agenda items, and the Uyghur situation is also important. For that reason, we are pushing with other organizations to give a hard time for MP Sameer Zuberi to get the thing done as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Mehmet. I just wanted to take a moment to highlight the incredible amount of trauma and mental health issues that impacted Uyghur Canadians and Uyghurs around the world live with. And despite that, we have such courageous and resilient human rights defenders and even just regular professionals from the Uyghur community still getting through the day and doing it by posing such a wonderful example as to how to act as human beings and humanity. In the interest of time, we have a final question that I wanted to give Rizwan Gol a moment to answer. And that question is from Dilmurat Mahmoud, and that is there a possibility that China will use soft language of UN to further reject the UN genocide and make the report counterproductive? So in other words, China kind of or indirectly using the UN report to say, oh, the UN said that it wasn't a very big deal, so therefore it's not a big deal. Do you think that's going to be a possibility, Rizwan Gul? Please let us know your thoughts.
Definitely. Definitely. The UN report actually has been delayed on the apparently, like, most likely under the pressure of China. It was released just before the Human Rights High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet to finish her work over there. So just before that, from this itself indicates how influential the China at the UN itself. And actually, China does not need this report to refuse the genocide. Why? Because China has been denying. China has been denying this genocide, and the denial is the last state of genocide. China has been denying, but now we know the truth. We know that we have the reports. We have, as Brother Mehmet Tohti mentioned, the satellite imageries, everything, the proof, the witnesses from the camp survivors. We have everything. And China has proceeded all the procedure, all the steps of the genocide. Chinese government will continue to deny using whatever they can use, soft power, the UN report, whatever, but it is the truth, and we are standing for the truth and speaking against it. And hope that with all the support and the collaborative effort, we will save lives of the Uyghurs and bring some tangible results for the Uyghurs, both in East Turkestan and outside. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Tazeen to introduce our last speaker, which happens to be our team member, and then we will wrap up right after that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Saliha. Thank you, Sister Rizwan Gul. One of the most significant weapon China is using for the genocide denial is its relations with Muslim world and the third world. Actually, the aid that China is providing to third world and many of the Muslim countries, including Pakistan, that China is using for the genocide denial, as we have witnessed. So now I will invite Brother Irshad Usman, Fund Development Manager at Justice for All Canada, to wind up the discussion, and he will be telling us about the human rights efforts of Justice for All. Thank you, Brother Irshad Usman, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sister Tazeen. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. This is indeed quite a heavy topic, but this needs to be discussed, and I thank from the bottom of my heart for all the esteemed speakers. Now, you may be wondering why Sister Tazeen called the fund development, and you may be wondering what the fund development has to do with human rights and advocacy. In fact, there's an essential connection. Actually, philanthropy fuels advocacy. Today, we heard from all the speakers the struggle of Uyghur Muslims. What happens is not periodic. The atrocities are ongoing. The fear people face in concentration camp are felt every minute and every second. And we heard from Sister Rizwan Gul's story, how her brother is being arbitrarily detained. And what he's facing is not just periodic, is every second. As we are talking, he's going through that unknown fear. What's going to happen? At the same time, the pain her family is facing, not being able to connect with him, not knowing what's going to happen to their family member, is also felt daily and every minute. So as Sister Rizwan Gul also mentioned that, Alhamdulillah, we are in a very privileged position to raise our voice, even to have a webinar like this, to express our concerns and be a voice to the voiceless. In addition, your financial support also will amplify these voices. It will support more activists. It will empower the voices of the Uyghur community in Canada and around the world. That kind of mobilization is needed. This work needs to be ongoing because we are against the largest state, which has most powerful. So that powerful, to counter that power, you need that public support. The advocacy and human rights work of Justice for All Canada also needs that philanthropic support to continue. So I invite all of you, I'm not going to do a fundraiser today, I'm inviting humbly and sincerely all of you to be part of financially supporting advocacy efforts, because it saves lives. As Sister Rizwana said, it saves lives, it will save life, and also it will create a positive change which you can be part of. That's the highest return you could get from your financial donation. So you can donate through JFAC Canada's website. And with that, I'm going to invite Sister Saliha to deliver the concluding remarks. Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you so much, Imam Irshad. I just wanted to take a moment to highlight really what we've learned from today's program by listening to our esteemed guests, and of course, being so fortunate to have a Canadian lawmaker, a member of parliament here with us, Sameer Zuberi, who is the author of the motion M62, which we hope that everybody will take a moment to call up their local member of parliament, maybe send them an email and ask them to vote yes on this motion when it comes to the table. I think we learned today, as highlighted by Mehmet, as well as Rizwan Gul, as well as our own team member Tazeen here, that the UN report really falls short of labeling atrocity crimes against Uyghur Muslims as a genocide. But despite this, it does designate ongoing human rights violations as crimes against humanity. And knowing this, under international law, this UN report still successfully warrants action under the Genocide Convention. And of course, we know that the Genocide Convention is something that the Canadian government is party to. So it is our government's moral obligation and duty to establish a few actions that we were talking about. So for first and foremost, a refugee stream for Uyghurs sooner rather than later, such as the one proposed by MP Sameer Zuberi's motion M62. And it also demonstrates, the report demonstrates to us that we must move towards a complete ban on forced labor products emerging from Northwest China, in other words, East Turkestan, as was done in the United States. I wanted to thank everybody for their generous time this evening. You can head over to our website, justiceforallcanada.org, to learn more about our Save Uyghur campaign and to support our cause. I once again want to thank the generous time and contribution from our panelists today, MP Sameer Zuberi, Mehmet Toti, as well as Rizwan Gul. And thank you so much to Tazeen for hosting today's successful program. I hope everybody signs off a good night or a good afternoon wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Assalamu alaikum.
Very much, especially Sameer Zuberi. He was having a party at home. And Mehmet Toti and Rizwan Gul. Thank you very much.
Everybody.
For your time.